Thanks.
All righty, here we go. It is Flyers game day. Flyers Leafs tonight. It's Jason Martinez, Chris Terrian, Brian Smith from Wells Fargo Center, and a chance to begin the gauntlet of the Philadelphia Flyers schedule tonight against the Leafs at home. And they'll get the next 2 home games are against the Leafs, sandwiched with what, Boston in between, Smitty?
Yeah, we go to Boston on Saturday. Yep. So,
holy.
The gauntlet is here.
It's not a really good town around St. Patrick's Day either. It's a shame that we're going to be.
Yeah, I bet Saturday is going to be boring as can be.
Yeah, just another chill day in Beantown for St. Patty's Day. Holy. Look out. Boys, get out as quick as you can. Bundy, when you got a stretch of games coming up like this, take me back to your playing days. I know you guys can't look at the whole kind of gauntlet here, but I would assume players are pretty damn well aware of what's on the horizon and what lies ahead as well.
You know what, Jace? I've never really been on a Flyers team like this where I was the one going, man, we got to really buckle down for the next 7. I was on the team that was one of the hunters, right? Like we, always had great teams with Lindros and LeClaire and stuff. So that was never really presented to me. But this is now like if you want to see like the two sides of it to me, the Flyers feel like the underdog in the next 7 games. Like it feels like it's them against the world, right? And if they come out of this, I believe, with 6 or 7 points out of the 14 available. Well, people are like, well, why say that? Because I'm saying that is actually good. That will keep your head up in the top 8. But what you can't have is you can't go 1-6 with no points in the extra frame, or you're done. So this 7 games will tell. Yeah, and so this 7 games will tell a story. There's going to be a lot of high drama moments. There's going to be a lot of things that go on in the next 7 games, but it will be the benchmark and the ultimate story time for this team, and it will tell what most likely will happen. It may also be a nothing burger, like I just said. Maybe they get 7 points out of 14. It's kind of a ho-hum. Maybe they earned 3 or 4 points. Maybe they got lucky in another one, but they have to keep collecting points, is what I'm saying. And if you're ever going to go into a bad stretch, now would be the absolute single worst time that you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in a way, I guess maybe it's just like a 7-game playoff series, is it not? It's just kind of the same overall atmosphere. But you've got you've got the Islanders, who are obviously had been red hot, lost finally. A lot of people expect them to come back down to earth. And at the same time, the Red Wings are not going to keep being as bad as they've been for the rest of the year. So I don't think this 4-horse race is certainly over yet. There's still going to be a lot of competition for these last spots.
The Flyers need to continue adding to their mantle, and that means points and finding ways. I'm not even saying if like you talk about late games where you're tied. You know what? If I'm the Flyers, I'm trying to get to overtime because that point becomes that precious. Like if there's 2.5 left, I can't in a game unless you absolutely, like Minnesota last week, right, with that the goalie pull in overtime,
right?
Completely jumped 3 teams. But again, if they get scored and they get nothing, that's going for it. The Flyers are not there. They haven't had to be there all year where they need like that desperate thing, a desperate push for points. But if I'm the coach and it's like 2-2, 3 minutes to go, I'm saying be 150% sure what you do offensively.
Yeah.
But make sure that you do not give away that point, because that could be the point that's the difference at the end of the year. Yep. So I know it sounds like kind of it's not a loser's attitude. It's actually it's a strategic way of playing the game.
Yep.
And if you can hold the puck as much as you can, then that's the best part. But that'll be very much part of the formula. And the Flyers, quite frankly, are afforded to do that.
Bundy, this team this year has been better against teams that are above them in the standings than teams below them. They've risen to the occasion. They've gotten beat up a few times. Obviously, the 7-0 game against Tampa. Tampa came in here 1-6-3. Colorado came in, beat them up. But when you look at the mentality of a player playing against the top teams, I imagine is one of those things that gets you a little bit more up for the game, because it's like we've got something to prove, and you can really double down on that underdog mentality. Because they are going to be Vegas, they're not going to be favorites in the next 7, according to Vegas. Not that matters, but that being said, players go into these situations going, okay, we're playing against the top teams. Let's kind of rally together and show what we got.
Yeah, and absolutely. And again, that's been this team's mantra right through the year. Like, hey, nobody cares about us. No one likes us. I mean, we came in, no one wanted anything to do with any of them, right? We were, the guys that said, and the only one that really, they were the ones that said, like, we don't know who we are. And the GM said, we'll leave it up to the players to decide, how the team will do. And so what they did was they worked their rear ends off all year. I mean, and they overworked teams early in the year. We've talked, guys, all year, all three of us, about how games become richer, they become harder to play. There's not as much space on the ice.
Yeah,
that's what you're going to see the difference in. And I think this is where the Flyers have to keep their workmanship attitude, but it's also going to be times where you're going to see other teams, some of their skill is going to shine through. And it's a matter of the Flyers mitigating some of that. This is where you want your big guys to shine, to come through. Tonight you got Marner out of the lineup here tonight, but with Matthews, of course, he had a hat trick against the Flyers last game. You got to mitigate the damage those guys do, keep the work boots on, and take away time and space. That's how you play. That's playoff hockey, is eliminating the amount of space that good teams have to put themselves in scoring positions. And I don't need like an analytical stat sheet to tell me that. I just know that that's what playoff hockey is.
The interesting thing that I was looking at in the last couple of days, Danny Briere talked about the Wade Allison situation, and when they traded him, and how they had him penciled into the lineup at the start of camp, but he didn't have a good camp and never really got it back. And he brought up an interesting point that you forget that back in training camp, Tyson Forrester was not seen as a part of this lineup. He was penciled in for the AHL. And when you look at him now and what he's brought to this team now and the way John Tortorella talks about him, it's stunning to think that in this same season he wasn't forecasted being part of the lineup. And that's the part that he's talking about when he says that the kids will dictate the rebuild and the players and how fast they grow. And that's part of the reason why they're here, is because a guy like Tyson Forrester has grown so quickly this year, and it's a huge part of the lineup.
And he's come along, but we were force-fed Tyson Forrester.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be fair where we're at here. I mean, for 30 games, we were force-fed a guy that couldn't score, and then he found a little bit of a rhythm. Right now, he's going to be a really good player, but he's a project player where I think where they looked at it and said, is there more benefit having that guy here to develop in a year that maybe we're allowed to make mistakes in? Because, going back to September camp, nobody thought the Flyers would be here. They thought they'd be close to eliminated now.
Yeah. When
you really look at what this was. And this just being boldly honest.
Right.
It's not a slap at anyone. So what happens is with a team like this is they come out of their shell. They perform far better than they wanted to. But at the same time, you had a chance to let guys grow a little bit. Noah Cates was this guy last year for John Tortorella. Yeah. He was the darling Cinderella. And they gave him every opportunity possible. And that this year, and he got rewarded with a 2-year deal at the end. This year, it's Tyson Forrester that they seem to want to push into the forefront, and he has scored. The one thing with Forrester, guys, he relies, and Tippett, too much on their shots. They need to find developed ways to be more muckers and grinders in and around the paint, because the shot is great to have, and they both have terrific shots, but you cannot rely solely on that. You have to get dirtier and dirtier to be a long-time efficient forward in this league.
And when you got that body, like Noah Tippett, I don't recall a rebound goal from him. Like being around the net and just slapping in a rebound. A lot of the shots, and like the goal he had the other night where TK finds him on the back door as he's darting there. Bundy, that's funny because, coming into this season, I remember having the conversations on Flyers Daily about how do we measure progress if the team doesn't surpass from a points percentage or win standpoint that it did last year. Because I was of that mindset too. I didn't think we'd be here at all. I thought that it would even be a step backwards, even though you could still have progress. But what did that look like? But here we are, and playing these meaningful games at this time of year. When you were a young player, and you get into these games at a playoff push, and when the games get super serious and more is on the line. What kind of pressure does that put under a player, and how do they thrive on it and not let it eat them up?
Everybody's different, Jason. Some guys handle it better, others don't. There's guys that seize up like, they don't want anything to do with it. And that's the reality. There's players that get nervous in big games. They get, they don't perform in playoff games because they think too much. They get nervous, and you can't be like that. You just got to go play. because the result's going to be the result anyway, and you may as well bring what you bring to the table. It's funny. I was talking to Leclerc the other night in the box. It's about Owen Tippett. And, in his two old roommates and a couple old hockey guys, I said to Johnny, I said, he is so good, but he would be the easiest player for me to play against. He does not want to dip the shoulder and go wide. That's where you make defensemen panic. That's where you make guys have to be like, oh, no, this big guy, is this horse coming forward is going to try to drive the net. He never does that. And Johnny Leclerc, I'll say it now, he agreed 100%. He said, though, the one thing with him, he goes, he's got everything, right? I said, he does, except for the will to dip his shoulder and go to the net.
Speaking of
drive it hard. Yeah.
That's it. That is so hard on defensemen, and that's why I'm saying it. Like, I'm looking for every angle that I remember as a player to make life a disaster for the other team when you have a guy that's got that kind of talent and that kind of speed and body. But he's got to pound that puck to the net and stop relying on open seam passes that you're going to get once in a blue moon. You've got to create those opportunities. Rick Tocchet scored over 400 goals in this league going to the front of the net. And there's a lot of examples like that.
Speaking of people you defended well, do you have Jaromir Jagr's bobbleheads?
I don't know. If I did, I'd cut their heads off.
No, like they're missing.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, the whole
got
truck
stolen. The truck.
Yeah, 18,000 of them.
Where are they?
They don't know.
Were they in Pittsburgh or
here?
They're
supposed to be given out in Pittsburgh tonight, but obviously that's not happening. I just thought maybe that would be part of your history with him, that you defend the bobbleheads right out of existence. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's actually a good example of a skill guy that actually liked to try to go wide all the time and go to the net. And with that skill, and he did that.
Yeah. Certainly, too, the goaltending is part of the reason the Flyers are here. And not to say that it's a surprise, but it's a surprise the way it's developed, because everybody thought that was a strength when Carter Hart was here, and I don't think that if you told the Flyers fans in the fall that Carter was going to be gone in January, that they'd think they were going to get anywhere. But Sam Ersson is another guy that's certainly not only played very well, but has had that short memory and has not let mistakes dwell on him. He has that issue in Tampa the other night, bounces right back with a pretty strong game against San Jose, and that's the kind of stuff you're going to need down the stretch as these games get more and more critical.
He did. He's got a very short memory. He does have the odd game, though, right, Jason? Jason's an old goalie here, but he does have that odd game where you're kind of mystified by it a little bit. But and I think the thing is, you're not really sure when it's coming. Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the bulk of the work he's done, he's been really terrific this year. And he's been asked, when you look, he's still just a kid, right? He's been asked to play these big minutes, come in here and adapt. And I don't think he came in thinking he'd be the starter and that the Carter Hart situation would have traversed the way it did forward. And so here you go. You got a guy that's got to have a short memory. He's got his team in a playoff hunt, and he's going to have to continue to be good for them. And again, tonight will be the start of that 7 games. They're going to use him for a bulk of them. But this will be a really, really, really important game for him tonight, setting the tone moving forward for some very, very troubling and very high traffic games coming about with Boston, Toronto, and teams like that.
Jason, the Detroit dumpster fire is still burning, by the way. They just gave up a shorthanded goal to Arizona. One Coyotes.
Look at Sider. He just tripped on the blue line.
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
They had a fight at practice the other day, too.
I saw that. A little tussle. Yeah.
Going full scorched earth. I think the thing, Bundy, you bring up that point with Ersson. It's a good point. You don't know when kind of a clunker is coming. You don't see like it come and you go, and I expected this. It just seems to happen. And like when he's bad, he's really off.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're going to be bad, just be abysmal and then get right back on the beam. Yeah, and get on for the next one. But not knowing when it's coming is one of those things. Let me ask you about Cam York, Bundy, because his stat line the other night was the following. He had 2 assists in the game. He was a +1. He had 5 shots on goal, 3 block shots, 26 minutes and 7 seconds of ice time, 3:45 on the power play, 5:25 on the PK, 7 points in his last 8 games, playing over 23-30. I always say, don't listen to what a coach says about a player. Look at how a coach uses a player. What's that all tell you?
He was the best player on the ice on both teams the other night. He was unbelievable. And you know what? You never know. Like, he's still a young guy. He still has his moments. But you know what I like about him, guys? He's got a great stick in the corners, like stick on puck. And I learned that from my great partner and Hall of Famer here, Eric Desjardins. He said, Bundy, stick on puck, stick on puck. And once you do that, man, you frustrate guys into the ground defensively. You used to hate it. And I'd have guys, like we'd see them in NHLPA meetings, like, oh, you and Desjardins, man. He's like, there's no space. He goes, you guys get stick on puck all the time. It's so hard to play. And you know what? It didn't mean crushing someone's head through the glass. And even though they wanted that here back then, right? They always want 6'4" guys just run through the boards. But I found it an easy way to play. And Cam York does a great job of it. Very poised. He's been very, very good with the puck. He's been excellent lately, guys. And it's been really, really fun to watch a young defenseman come along like that.
Tell us about that from a defender's perspective, because there's the stick on puck part, and then there's the thing that I've always heard him tell the kids is focus on the logo.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Is that an art of focusing on the logo while still having
100%. So what I would do before a game, I probably told Jason, he took off. I would sit there, Brian, and I would literally take the other team's logo.
Oh, there he is.
And I'm saying Jason's back. I would take the other team's logo before a game, and I would stare at it for about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And just embody it in my head. So when I had a one-on-one, say it's Yager, right? Now everybody's different because you might have a right shot on the right side, a left shot on the right side, which he was.
Yeah.
So I'd have to worry about him cutting in. But exactly what I do, stick on the ice because they're gonna have to move it through. But the one they can weave the puck in between your stick,
right,
but they can't get around your body if you're staring at the crest and you keep him in front of you.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is stay at the crest and move laterally with that player. He'll never get around you. What happens with guys when you see guys get roasted on one-on-ones? They look down for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
And as soon as you look down, the player will dip around you, and it's over before you know it.
It's like hand on the hip, too, right?
Yager there on TV a couple weeks ago when his first year. I think it was his first goal against the Flyers. I mean, honest to God, I went out. When I got on the ice, I wanted to hit him. Then I realized if I did hit him, I was probably going to blow his knee out. And that's honest to God. And I looked like a fool. He scored, but that's what happens when you don't take. Hey, everybody, when you take your eyes off of the puck, that's exactly what happens. Or when you take your eyes off the body and put them on the puck, you're done.
But you used to put the hand on the hip too, so you could feel the body moving before you even could visualize it.
That was in the corner.
Yep.
It's called dirty dancing, Jason. Kind of just manhandle a little bit. You're going this way now. Here you go over here.
I just had a vision of you with Yager up over your head, like
the Blades of Glory.
Nobody puts Yager in the corner.
The same thing. Let me get back to what you said. You're talking a moment ago about you never know, with Urson specifically, when the stinker's coming. Like, when you're a player, do you have a night where you're in the locker room before the game and you just don't feel like it's going to be your night? And if you do, is there a way to overcome that? Or do you just have to fight through it all night?
You know what? It's a great question. There's nights you feel great and you play great. There's nights you feel really good and you play good. And then there's nights you feel really bad and you actually end up sometimes feeling like that. It's always a mindset. You learn more as you go. Like have more belief in yourself in the game. But there's nights, guys, where and then the best is when you feel awful and you end up playing good. That's the best. And it rarely works the other way. So, but it does. And you know what? That's the body, right? Like you get to the rink some nights, you wake up from a nap in the afternoon, everybody takes one. And you could just be groggy, just out of it. Your body, your legs are heavy. How do you do that? How do you get around that? You got to come in and you got to really get yourself going. I found getting my legs moving on a bike, doing something for a few minutes, get yourself a little bit more ready for it.
Yeah, and in this stretch, you got to be ready. Sometimes you just wake up from that nap and you can't snap the cobwebs out of your brain.
It's brutal.
Yourself. 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So we're going to join our
and I used to get the cold shower. That helps.
Pre-game cold shower. That's good for swelling, too.
Ice bath, all of it.
All right, we're going to join our radio audience here.
Philadelphia Flyers hockey.
There's a shot directed right now. They score!
This is the Flyers pregame show on 93.3 WMMR.
That's right. It is Flyers game day as the Philadelphia Flyers are set to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. The gauntlet begins tonight. It's Chase Martinez and Brian Smith. And Bri, always a fun time when Toronto comes to town. I have so many memories of Flyers Leafs over the years, whether Ty Domi was coming to town or way back and Darryl Sittler or whoever the players are. But it's always fun when Toronto comes. It's always a heightened sense, especially when they're good, and they are now.
Yeah, it's been interesting with them over the years, right? For so long, it was a situation where the Flyers beat the Maple Leafs in that second round back in 2004, and then they never got back to the playoffs again for, 12, 13 years. They're one of those teams that the league is better when they're good. I mean, Gary Bettman told us at the Stadium Series, you got to love all 32 of your teams equally, but the NHL is better when the Maple Leafs are good. So it's good to see this team, there in the fight. Obviously, the Flyers want to beat them, and they want to keep that cup drought going for Toronto. But they are one of the exciting teams to watch. They're one of the teams that sells this game right now with all the talent they have up front. And the Flyers got to see them twice here in the next 3 games. So, it's going to be a group that they need to tame and, keep themselves pointed in the right direction, getting these points.
And if you're going to tame this Toronto Maple Leaf team, you're going to have to try and tame the number 1 goal scorer in the NHL right now. Austin Matthews this season in 63 games has 54 goals. That is 8 more than the other 2 guys that are behind him. That's Sam Reinhart and Zach Hyman. And he's a guy that, and we saw it in the last game that the Flyers played against the Leafs, that overtime loss. Is the natural hat trick in the second period. And that's going to be a guy that you've got to be just incredibly diligent on and not leaving a lot of space to be able to get that shot off. Yeah,
I mean, we were just talking a moment ago with Bundy on the streaming pregame show about how he used to defend players. And, the moment you look down or check something else, the guy's going to be by you. Matthews, I think, epitomizes that. And, the moment you let up on him, the moment you lose track of him, he is going to strike and be deadly. The first of those 3 goals he had the last time these 2 teams met, I mean, he just changes the angle and bang. You've got to limit his time and space as much as you possibly can. Again, with Marner out, that's one other weapon you don't have to worry about, because a lot of times in situations like this, you're picking your poison. If you're going to shut down Austin Matthews, you got to deal with Mitch Marner. If you're going to take him out, then you got John Tavares coming around. So it's one of those things where you've got a lot to deal with, but he's probably the main guy that you want to kind of try to neutralize and then let the other guys beat you.
And the thing is, in that first goal, I think that he scored against Flyers, it was on a bad change. You got to be really dialed in.
There was another one of those the other night. It was Tampa, right? One of the goals in the 4-goal onslaught was a bad change for the Flyers. So it's just being diligent with stuff. First of all, let's not take penalties, right? And let's not be changing shorthanded. But if you are, let's be really diligent about it and make sure that these guys on the ice, I mean, that puck's got to be deep, or you've got to just stay out there. Torch talked about that, I think, after one of those other games where they had a bad change. Maybe it was that Toronto game, where sometimes you just got to play tired for another 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
It's better to play tired than to, take a bad change and put everybody at a disadvantage.
No doubt about it. And one of the interesting things about tonight will be how Sam Ersson deals with Austin Matthews, because he touched him up for that natural hat trick in the last game. And it's I always believe this, that, the supreme shooters in the league, sometimes, especially if they've touched you up, they're almost beating you before a game, because the release ties your head a little bit in knots. So Sam Erson's just going to have to, anything that Austin Matthews delivers, just battle to get some flesh in front of it.
Again, I think we saw that against Washington when Bobby Brink, remember, he was frozen by Alex Ovechkin. I know Brink was at the end of a shift, but you'll never convince me there wasn't part of him looked out there and it's like, oh, crap, that's Alex Ovechkin. Yeah. And you kind of just hesitate for a second. So you're right. That reputation can kind of precede you a little bit.
Yeah, 54 goals. He is on some pace this season. Let's get to the Flyers line combinations for this game. The Flyers going to go the standard 12-6 again. It's going to be Paling, Cates, and Hathaway. Set it and forget it.
They're up. They're listed first tonight.
Yeah.
Wow.
I gotta ask Torts and Hockey Hounds next week when the listing comes out. Is that in his order, or is that just us being making too much out of just how it's printed on the card? Then you got Lawton, Tippett, and Konechny. Morgan Frost, who I thought had a hell of a game the other night against San Jose. He'll be centering Joel Farabee and Tyson Forster, and they're going to be relying on that line to generate more offense in this one.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly going to be a key here, not just this game, but through this whole stretch. That they're going to need some of these guys to, some of them did start to pick it up against Tampa. They're going to need that to continue.
Yeah, Couturier, Gurianov, and Brink, York and Sanheim, Zamula, and Eric Johnson, Stahl, and Adard, and Sam Emerson gets the start tonight for the Philadelphia Flyers. All right, stay tuned. Tim Saunders, Todd Fedoruk, they're standing by. They've got the countdown to face-off between the Flyers and Leafs. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.